male main characters that are like really big and hot and gruff. Ugh. But no, this book hated me particularly. Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about some of my least favorite books of the year, potentially my worst books of the year. We're gonna see how this goes. I'm not that good at like giving my thoughts on books I didn't like. I find it really difficult to tell like which ones I liked the least, so this is gonna be mostly just kind of a jumble and you'll just hear about them as I go. Also, a lot of these were like bad in an unmemorable way. So anyway, let's get into it. My 10 worst books of the year. Okay, we're gonna start off with one that I didn't even dislike that much because it was so ridiculous. This is The Stowaway by James S. Murray and Darren Wearmouth. This is a cruise ship thriller that I read. I think I picked it up because Covers with Cassidy enjoyed it as a thriller, and so I listened to the audiobook and it was just so ridiculous, like poorly. I could not give this points for being a good book, but it was entertaining. But I wanted to talk about it, and I'm definitely not going to talk about it in my best books of the year video, so I thought I'd bring it up here. My review on Storygraph focuses on this one particular moment, which I thought was just absolutely incredible. So there's a serial killer on this boat and he's targeting children, which is horrible, which is why it's so ridiculous. And he snatches this kid who's out late playing basketball, and the response of all of the adults to this child sneaking out of his room to play basketball at midnight is that the investigators all go like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All the kids are always sneaking out at night to play late night basketball. And the mom, when she hears like, we think he snuck out to play late night basketball, she goes, oh, I should have let him play more basketball. It was so ridiculous. And just in general, this book was very much like the thriller's idea of a serial killer. You know, they're conniving, they have a very specific MO, they're sneaky and leaving little clues and super smart. And anyway, absolutely ridiculous book. Honestly, if that's what you want, like, go give it a read. I couldn't even be that mad at it because it was so ridiculous. So I'm gonna group the rest of these books into kind of subcategories, and the next one I'm gonna tackle is cozy mysteries that just had nothing to offer. And I have two in this category. I picked these both up because I got them in my first ever Stuff Your Kindle day in September of 2023, and I am not a big romance reader, so a lot of those books are romance. So I thought that cozy mysteries, which was another subgenre they had a lot of, might be my way to go. So I picked up two books, which were Antiques, Artifacts, and Alibis by Sally Bayless and Deal Gone Dead by Carolyn Ritter Aspenson. And both of these were just very blah. I believe Antiques, Artifacts, and Alibis is about a woman who's like inheriting this curator position at a museum, and then her predecessor dies. I could be wrong. The other one is about a realtor whose client dies in her small town. They're both small town. I believe they're both southern. Neither of those things do very much for me. I am not from a small town. I don't really like small town settings. I'm not from the South. I know that doesn't feel cozy or homey to me necessarily. One of them also involved a romance with the sheriff, and I'm never for a cop romance. I'm never for a law enforcement romance. I will never find that appealing. And I think the general thing with cozy mysteries that can be weird is just that like these people are so unaffected by murder and like that's, I don't know, disturbing. They also, both of these I think were under 300 pages, and that's just like not enough time to develop any of the characters in a fun way or create any interesting mysteries. So yeah, cozy mystery is not really my thing. I did read one semi-cozy mystery that I did kind of like, which was In the Company of Witches, but I do have a couple more of these from Kindle, free Kindle books, but I don't know if I'll actually read them. So that's those. My actual like lowest rated book of the year, which is totally not the worst book I read, but is maybe the book that made me the most angry in the moment, is a children's book, which is part of why this is so ridiculous. This is Wedgie and Gizmo by Suzanne Selfers. I give this a 1.5 star, which is the lowest. I'm not a good at rating books that I don't like. It's such a nice rating still. Like, I couldn't even give it a 1 star. So this is a children's book about an evil guinea pig and an overenthusiastic corgi, and I read it because during Realmathon we got bonus points. I was on the blue team, Team Creation, and we got bonus points for words that were creation themed, and so as a group we decided that a gizmo was a creation themed word. It's like a gadget, a little invention, it does something, and somebody found this book and was like, we should all read it. It's only like 100 pages. So I did, and I hated it. It was like, I know I'm not the target audience, but I love reading all age demographics. I read like at least 10 children's books this year, and I usually like them a decent amount, but the writing was so annoying. Like, I could not stand either of the two perspectives. It was too over the top ridiculous, not in a cute way. The pictures were cute, but that was about it. The plot was stupid. I just hated it. So yeah, I'm not gonna say that's like my worst book of the year because it was so like, what even? Who cares? But I had to mention it. Okay, before we get too far into this video, I want to just touch briefly on The Spiral of Life. I don't want to talk too much about this because this book has so many things that I would love to love. It's set in Scotland, it's about Norse mythology, it's sapphic, it is an indie author, indie publisher, so I do not want to rag on it because I don't think it deserves bad press, but The Spiral of Life, I did not enjoy this book. It just felt like one of those fantasy books that is trying to be like other books, in this case particularly Percy Jackson, and so I can't help but compare it to that, and I just felt like the world felt completely empty. Like, I didn't have any sense of where they were and who was there and who they were gonna run into. They were in this like parallel dimension world kind of where the gods are, and I never had a sense of what was going on. The character relationships felt really weird. Like I said, it's sapphic kind of. The main character is a lesbian, and she like originally like is kind of like love at first sight, like, oh my god, I just met the woman who's gonna be my wife, and is attracted to the other main character, and then that just kind of like goes away, and then she's like, I don't even know that we're friends. I don't know, it was just weird. It was too short. The audiobook was like very crafted. It had like musical elements and sound effects, but it made for a very unpleasant listening experience at moments. Like, there was a character towards the end that had this like rasping cough because they were sick, and I'm like, great, that's evocative, but then you have to hear this character talk for like 10 minutes straight, just like, like, it was so unpleasant. And yeah, it was not a very good book. But again, I don't want to say it's my worst book of the year or anything. I just didn't really like it. It didn't feel very well developed. Now we have another subcategory, which is romantasy. Romantasy that I hated, romantasy that felt so blah, so whatever. There are 2 books in this category for me: A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stacia Stark and Blood and Steel by Helen Schreier. I do not know how to pronounce her name. So both of these were super generic romantasy books, quite in a different vein. One is like girl runs away, runs into band of, I don't know, not thieves, band of mercenaries, kind of, just to infiltrate a castle at one point. The plot was fine. That is A Court This Cruel and Lovely. The plot was fine. My main issue with A Court This Cruel and Lovely was I despised the male love interest. I hated him so much. Literally all his perspective was ever good for was to like smirk about how he stared at the female love interest's butt all the time and just how horny he was, and I was like, great, why am I here? And from what I've heard, the series does not get better. I think it goes downhill. So if I didn't like the first one, I definitely won't like any of the rest. I unfortunately read this on recommendation of a booktuber I really like. I'm not gonna bring it up because I didn't like it, but this was like my first experience, not my first experience with romantasy, my first like experience this year with romantasy where I was like, oh wow, I don't like this. I think I liked Blood and Steel a little bit better. This was more like there was some training, there was like a journey part of it, there was a little bit of like in school part of it. Very generic. The things that really bugged me were that our main character is like not like other girls. She wants to fight, she's special. And like the male main characters are like really big and hot and gruff. Ugh. One thing I really didn't like about this world was, well, one, it felt very generic in general, as they both did, but this world like had a prophecy explanation for sexism. Like the reason they were sexist is because a prophecy said like a woman will ruin the world, and I just feel like that's so lazy, like that's so uninteresting. I feel like there's so many fantasy worlds that do an incredible job of like getting into like systemic oppression and discrimination in the most like interesting way that makes you feel like you like understand things about how the world works. And this was just like, well, you're sexist because the prophecy says so. No thank you. I thought I might pick up the second book, but then I started it and I was like, oh god, oh god, no. So I will not. I will probably not read anything else by this author. That being said, sometimes I make poor decisions, so I don't know. Okay, now we're getting into the real big disappointments. I'm gonna have a separate video for like most disappointing books that didn't end up being like absolute favorites of the year, but these were all definitely books that I thought I would enjoy. I don't know that I really thought that the romanticies were gonna be great. I didn't think that the cozy mysteries were gonna be great, but these three, my last three, I really did. And this is in no particular order. I guess I'll go in slight order, but I didn't like any of these very much. Okay, so Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. I don't know who originally recommended this to me, but I thought it was gonna be good. I know that Reads with Rachel liked it, but I only saw that after I read it. This was supposed to be like dragon fantasy, but good, and it was not. So there were things I liked about it. This has a non-binary main character, much appreciated. There was like thieving aspect, a heist aspect, love a heist, dragons. It was great. One thing that I thought that was pretty cool about this was there were kind of three perspectives, and the thief character was told in first person and the dragon character was told in second person, like to the thief, and then there was a third person aspect to it. Anyway, I forget, but I liked that that was kind of how the perspectives were differentiated. I thought it was cool. It kind of built up like, oh, this is what's gonna happen, that these characters are gonna still be in touch. I don't know, but like everything else was just like meh to bad. Like the world building was so bad. The magic system made no sense. It was like, had this whole thing about how like there are these 5 different kinds of magic connected to the different dragons, but then none of the magic that it introduced, like it didn't make clear like, oh, this is from this family or this group of magic. Like it had all this stuff about like creating wards, and then that was never explained how that fit into one of the kinds of magic. It literally used a term that originates in Harry Potter fan fiction, which is a notice me not charm. Like it literally used that phrase, and that was just like the thing. I was like feeling like, oh, this is so just like generic and mediocre, like this doesn't feel unique at all. And then it like was like literally like one of the most generic or like borrowed things in the book. The pacing was not great. There was a little bit of an arc of a build up to a heist, but it didn't feel natural, the getting to know each other. The characters had like potential, but they were just so like in the end. And then there was like a romance that kind of came out of nowhere. It was just very sloppily done. So unfortunately, again, I don't want to rag on this too hard because it did have some things I really like and I want to see more of. I don't want L.R. Lamb to fail. They seem cool, but this was not good. Really, I was so excited for this. I remember I started reading this the day of the solar eclipse and I was like in such a good mood, and it didn't really go anywhere. Now these two are really really on my shit list. My second to worst book of the year is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I thought this was gonna be cool, and the first half was fine, if slow paced. It's like this dual timeline thing where there's like, in the past, the women working at the Lost Apothecary where basically they like help women poison their abusive husbands. Great, love that. And then the second one is like this woman in the modern day like looking into it, but then it just got so weird, like a bunch of really unrealistic character decisions. I wish I could remember better. I read this in January, so it's been a long time. The writing style was so repetitive, which a couple other books have been like this, where it will like tell you everything like 3 different times, and I'm just like, I get it, I'm listening. Trust me, I'm here. I'm listening. It was so annoying. And then like the conclusion was so ridiculous. It was just spoilers, but like the woman in the modern day, she gets like accused of poisoning her husband, and they're like, oh, she was researching this apothecary, and then it turns out, I could be misremembering, I think it turns out that he poisoned himself. I don't know. It was so ridiculous and weird, and what did I say? I said no lovable characters. I gave this a 2.5 stars, but I remember it probably worse than it really was, because I forget all the generically okay parts. But yeah, I won't be reading any more Sarah Penner, I don't think. My worst book of the year, which I did rate at 2.25 stars, like I said, I'm not very good at being mean, is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandy Menon, or Menon. This had been on my TBR since it came out in like 2017. This is a book set in San Francisco, which is my hometown. So I was really excited. It's like an arranged marriage romance between two Indian American teenagers from California who do a summer program in San Francisco. It should have been good. It should have been good. It was not. It was really weird. I don't even know how to get into all the things that I despise about this book. So first of all, the setting. This did not feel like it was set in San Francisco at all. Like, maybe they talked a little bit about how it was cold, which it is. They talked about how it was foggy, which it is. But like the places they went to, like, I know that city. I spent a lot of time in that city. I take the bus everywhere. Like, I know that city. I did not ever feel like I was in San Francisco. All the places they went to that were like notable places, I don't think even exist. There was like a book bar that they went to. I've never heard of that. I love books. I would know if there was a book bar. It was just like restaurants, like nothing felt. They didn't even go to any landmarks. They went to Bernal Hill once, I guess. Bernal Hill's great. It's beautiful, but like, what? There was all this weird messaging about these characters and what they wanted to do and their relationships with their families. So that was like a lot of my review. Like, there was basically this whole thing about Rishi is like an artist at heart, and he like is trying to be an engineer just because his parents want him to or something. And it's just like, you can also be an engineer. Like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And then like, he got into MIT. Like, he has to be a decent student. He got into MIT for engineering. You're telling me that he's like not really good at engineering. He wants to be an artist. I don't know. It was weird. This is a lot about like this summer program where they had to develop an app, but they didn't actually talk about developing the app at all. They basically just talked about getting funding to like make their app the best. And really it was focused on this talent show where they could earn extra money to make their app better instead of like the actual app making, which was just so weird. If you're setting this up to be like a STEM teen book where they're like at this STEM summer camp, like, why do you then make it about this talent show where they do a dance? That's just like this mismatch. That was weird, because then the focus was all on this. The talent show took place halfway through the summer program, so it's like the whole thing is like the first half of the summer program, and then the next half goes by like, no. There was all this stuff about how like their love, which I think this is true in like a lot of teen romances, but like their love that they've developed over this 6-week summer program is like the truest love they'll ever be able to feel, and so they have to stay together. Despise. They like reached out to the super famous person in the like app development space, and she like immediately responded. Or no, one of them was like a comic artist that Rishi reached out to when he finally realized he was free to do art instead of engineering, and he like got him into school even though he was like past the application deadline. Like, what horrifying implications. Like, just email famous people in your field and they'll just get you into school. It doesn't matter. You don't have to follow the rules. Yeah, I don't like that. Also, there was not a single gay character or LGBT character at all in this book, which is just like personally offensive to me as someone from San Francisco who is queer and has a ton of queer friends. Like, that's rude. They don't go to the Castro. There were like 2 side characters that I really wanted to get together and be lesbians, but no. This book hated me particularly. And also for Dimple, like, her family was like heckling her about not getting married and not wearing makeup and not caring about her appearance and wanting to go to school like the whole book, and then all of a sudden at the end they're like, we're proud of you however you are. Like, no, what? It didn't make any sense. There was also some really judgy comments from Dimple about other girls in the program, about how they like dressed, I don't know, sexy or revealingly, and they were just there for, I don't even know. It was just, I didn't like this book. I don't know anyone likes this book. This came out in 2017. Like, this book is not that old. I can't believe the amount of judgmental comments and just weird messaging in this book. And come on, like, have you been to San Francisco? Like, I don't know, look on Google Maps. Find things that people actually care about. Ugh, it's so disappointing. So I guess that's my worst book of the year. Again, I love that these are Indian American main characters. I love that it's set in San Francisco. This had potential. The characters were not completely bad. I didn't mind Rishi, but ugh, those were my 10 worst books of the year, I suppose. Hopefully to fewer of them next year. I will say, like, my average rating this year is really good. I had a lot of fun. These are just a couple outliers. I hope you enjoyed. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. I don't think that I'm the arbiter of goodness in books, but it's kind of fun to get a little riled up from time to time. It's not high stakes. Let me know what your worst books of the year were, if you'd like to share. Do you agree with me on the kinds of books that you don't like, or do you have completely other different pet peeves? But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye.